Welcome to She Roars Boldly. I am your host, Dr. Deborah. Today, we're going to be diving into the stories of extraordinary women who are rewriting the rules, shattering expectations, and refusing to fade into the background. Empowered women say no to being defined by their challenges in a world that tries to silence and sideline them. She Roars Boldly celebrates the remarkable journeys of women who have transformed their struggles into stepping stones to success. So grab your coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready to be inspired and fired up. Everyone, this is Dr. Deborah, and this is She Roars Boldly. And we have another great guest. I know I say that every week, don't I? But they're all so wonderful. We can all learn something from whoever shows up. And today I want to introduce you to Mel here, and she's got an incredible message, and she has a cat that might show up. And I think that would be super fun if it does. She has a big cat. So Mel, take it away. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Deborah. My name is Mel Cunningham, and I am a double board certified energetics practitioner and empowerment leadership coach. And it's like, what does that mean? That means I help women take back their life. And so, little background on me: I spent many years, over 15 years, in corporate America, building teams, leading teams, helping with systems and processes and all the things to make everything work well, flow well, and accomplish goals. And loved the job, loved it, loved helping. I was in the medical arena as well, so I always say I'm a patient advocate. And then, on the outside, it looked like I had such an awesome, great life, which I did. I mean, I was enjoying my life. And then I crashed and burned, and I lost everything. Extreme burnout. I lost the job that my identity was tied to. I lost my relationship because I wasn't present. My health suffered. I was actually in bed for 3 months, and I could barely get out of bed. It took everything for me to just go to the bathroom. And, at that moment, I'll be honest. I mean, initially, I still resisted everything that was happening and, coming up for me. And I was just like, oh, I'll just push through this. I'll get through it. And I would fight it, and I resisted it. And even being in bed, I would resist it and be like, telling myself, oh, come on, Mel, you can push through this. You can do it. And finally, I had to admit to myself, like, what is really going on here? And is this what I want to do and continue to do? So from that experience, I had that opportunity to, choose. Do I continue down the path I've been on, or do I choose and create something different and new? And that's really what I did. And that experience, again, that didn't happen overnight, but that experience is what created my business and from my business. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping other women. So I work with individuals, I work with teams. I still work with corporate America because I believe that, when we take back our power and our control, and we start to do things from a place of, that internal empowerment, we can create such a shift and change, and not only in our own personal lives, but we can also then those around us. So I love working, so like I said, I still work in corporate, but I do it, what I say, my way. Where, helping to remove that toxicity and really just, I always like to say, rehumanize the workplace again. So whether it's in business or in, your career, it's really being able, helping women take back that control and understand what is driving. Because I work with women who are highly driven, who are successful, who are powerhouses. And oftentimes, we do a lot of things because we think we have to do them. And I'm here to tell you that you can actually really control and navigate what does that success look like for you? Because like I said, my personal experience, on the outside, I looked like I had it all. I had the awesome job. I had the recognition. I had the money. I had the lifestyle. I had everything. People were like, I want your life. But really, and even I didn't even realize it at that point, that I wasn't really even living my life. And so that's why I'm so passionate about helping others do that, because when you do it, now I live a completely different life. My business is complete, like all of it is so different, and I built it. I created it, and you can have as much success, even more success, and without having to give up or having to give up so much of you, your personal self. So that's my passion, and that's a little bit about how my business came to play.
Yeah, I like you said, give up so much of yourself
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
play.
and
It's really playing a role, isn't it? It's a role
it
that we think other people expect, and they probably do. Don't get me wrong.
well, yeah, and I mean, think about it. I mean, if we think about it, like especially as high achievers, I mean, high achievers, um, we are driven by that external. We are driven, and it starts from a very young age, right? Because I think about even it starts at a very young age. You know, we're told do this. If you don't, if you don't get this, then you're not good. You know, it just starts. And when you hear that, and again, you hear that, that becomes part of who you are. You're always looking for that validation. You're looking for that recognition. You're looking for that approval to be like, yes, yes, you are good. Yes, you are at the top of the game. Yes, you are this. And when you can step back and say, what is it that you want? Like, what is it? Like, so even same thing. I mean, how often do we hear, like, this is what you should do? We are ingrained and we are told from a very young age what, as we go through school, as we go through college, as we go through that, of like, this is what success looks like. This is what, you have, this is the way that, this is the path that you are supposed to go. And so often I think we just kind of fall into that mode and we do it. And I mean, I talk to women every single day. I talk to leaders every single day about, it's like I'm here and I'm not quite sure how I ended up here, but I'm here. And again, it doesn't mean you have to not be happy with what you're doing. Because, like I said, I was happy. I loved my life. I was enjoying my life. But the thing is I was so disconnected from myself, and I was living a life waiting for that next, like, it's almost like adrenaline you
Hmm.
get because it's like, it's that next hit. Somebody said, oh, boom, Mel, that was great. You've done something nobody else has done before. Boom, you were the top producer. All of that because we're trained to want that. And like I said, as high achievers, you want to be at the top of the game. And so all you're looking for is you're looking to that get to that next level. And I'm here to tell you that you can get to that next level in a much different way. And so you can actually feel good about what it is that you're doing. Because oftentimes, how many times, I know this is a thing for me where, you hit that success, you achieve that goal, and then you're on to that next thing, and you haven't even thought about it. You haven't even celebrated it. You haven't even understood, like, this was great. Like, this was a great accomplishment. And that's the work I do, is really when we can get into that underneath, into that depth, and really learn how to master our internal game. That's when everything starts to shift. Everything becomes easier. Everything happens faster. It's less effort, quicker, all of that. But we have to really come from the place of what is it that I want? And why am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this? And why does this matter? Instead of like, I should just be doing this.
Yeah. When you were talking there, I thought I did a lot of years in sales, and my managers would say things like, "What are you going to do for me today?" But you're
Exactly.
saying we actually do that to ourselves. What are you going to do for me today? To ourselves. Like,
Hmm.
okay, you did that. Great victory. Now what? What's next?
Yeah.
We're always, yeah.
We're always looking, and that comes from that when we're disconnected and we're seeking that external validation. When we see, because I mean, think about it too. The world is all about that external. Like, right? I mean, it is all about what does the outside perceive of us.
Hmm.
And so we're looking for that. And again, we have to come back inside and say, okay, why does this matter to me? Why is this important to me? And that's the same thing. Is my background is all sales too as well, and that's the same thing. Is especially in a sales role, you're only as good as what you do today. It doesn't matter. Like, you could have been the top producer, you could have, landed the biggest goal, and you know what? Today, you're nothing. And that's that piece. And so again, that goes back to that wiring that we have, to where we're like, okay, well, that's good, but now I have, what's the next thing? And we put all this pressure on ourselves. And when we come from that place, we get into that little, I like to call it autopilot. We just get into this mode of, we're just doing instead of being. And that's the thing, is we think, and so many people I talk to is like, right, this is just how it is. This is what's required for me to do this. And I'm like, newsflash, it's not. But this type of work, and when you do this, like, you have to consciously separate yourself from the norm, like, right? Because it's not going to just naturally happen. I had a conversation just the other day. They're going through some stuff and everything that they're happening, and I said, you realize the only one who can change this is you. And unless you choose to change this, all these things that are happening, because it was all, day-to-day things that we always deal with, like, right? So it's things, because again, I'm not here to say that all of a sudden your life is going to be sunshine and rainbows and there's not going to be any challenges or anything like that. Let's get real. We have to deal with people, like, right? People, circumstances. There are a lot that are out of our control, but there's so much that's in our control and for women, I look at it like, we give our power away. We give that power away because we either don't want to rock the boat, or we're like, well, this is what I should do. This is how it is. Because again, too, especially as women, we're oftentimes, juggling multiple things going on. So then we have this little guilt game that's going on every single day. Like, if I'm at work, then I'm not, being present for my family. If I'm with my family, then I'm not, in my business or with work. And so it's this whole thing of really coming back to and understanding. It's like creating that self-awareness and self-understanding of, like, what is important to me and what really does matter. And then how do I navigate that and create that? Because so often I meet so many people who we feel like we have to choose one or the other. And like, that's what I'm all about, is I'm like, this is success without sacrifice. You get to have both. You get to have a career, you get to have a business, and you get to have that personal life, that family life. You get to have that personal fulfillment. You don't have to choose. And so much of the world makes us feel like we have to choose one or the other. And that's what I think is so powerful about the work, is because we get really deep in there and we do work that, I mean, let's get real. It's work. I always say it's a little bit of work, but when you crack that and you really get in there and you start to rewire those patterns, those stories, what's happening internally within you, I mean, things shift very quickly, and then you create long-term sustainable change.
Yeah, I love that. Um, I talk a lot about when I do my speeches about women focusing, because you brought a really good point out there that we want it all, or we think we have to do it all. I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
a little of both, right?
Yeah.
But like I asked my husband one day, "What are you doing today?" He goes to work, comes home. He says, "I gotta cut the grass sometimes, take a nap, watch some TV." But us women, we list like so much.
Yeah.
And though you may want to do all that, it's not practical because you're exhausted. And then
Right.
you can't sleep because you're laying in bed going, "Oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I got to do this tomorrow." So what can you say to women that are in this almost like a crazy trap where they think they have to be all things to all people?
Yeah. Well, and I totally hear you, because like that's where I was at before everything just fell apart for me. Is because, again, let's get real to ourselves and say we don't have to do it. Number one, society has put these pressures on us, right? And we put but I also think too, like what you mentioned before too, we put the pressure on ourselves even more than what society does. So we have that society pressure, then we have our self pressure. And I mean, same thing, like I see this a lot in corporate, and like I came from an industry that was very male dominated. And sometimes as women, like we feel like we have to do twice as much, 10 times as much more to get that same recognition, right? And and again, is that reality? Sometimes yes, sometimes
Yeah.
maybe not, right? But we have to come back to, and I think the biggest piece of that is to take that moment to pause, because I think that's the biggest shift that happens with the clients that I work with is, when's the last time that you just stopped and paused and said, well, no, what is really important to me? Because again, to like to your question about that, like we think we have to do everything. But what's really important? What really matters? Like for example, if we think, like if we're running a team and we sit here and we think, well, I have to be available to my team 24/7 because otherwise what will they do? Well, in essence, you're creating an environment thinking that they can't, you're not empowering them, thinking that they need you, like, right? So when you can sit there and say, you flip that script and you empower them, and when you give them the space to do that, they will level up themselves, because that's what it's about, is leveling that up. So you have to look at, in all those things in your life, what is really important and where do I really have to put my energy? Because I think also another thing that happens, especially for women, because we're caregivers and we want to support each other, we want to do things, but what do we really need to do? And here's the other thing: the most important person and the most important thing is taking care of you first. And that's another piece for women, is we're last on our to-do list. We're last on the priority list. Like, I'll take care of myself when. And here's the deal, is if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not taking care of anything that you're responsible for. You're not being fully present. You're not presenting your best self. And so that's that piece where I'm like, it's that moment to pause and shift and really look at what's really happening. And then let's dissect that, look at that and say, okay, what's really important? Where do I need to put my energy? Because, like I said, it's been ingrained in us that we should take care of it all. Everything is important, and, take care of everybody else. When you start to unravel those stories, and this is the work I do too, is really start to understand, because sometimes we don't even really believe it, but it's so ingrained and wired into our system that we have to work to release that and to get rid of that and rewire a new thought pattern for that. And when we can do that, all that shifts. But again, none of that's going to happen just by you going through the motions each and every day. So I always look at that when I work with women and they come to me like this, I said, okay, we're going to pause. And you know what? That freaks a lot of people out, because they're like, what do you mean? I don't have time to pause. If I pause, it's all going to fall apart. Like, right? And that's the piece of it. And again, that is that internal system. I'm going to say it, like, we're going to call bullshit on the system, like, right? But until you do it, nothing is going to change.
Yeah. I mean, I always give them homework because I'm a teacher when I speak, and their homework is to get a pad of paper for the next week, write down everything you do.
Yeah.
At work, at home, anywhere you are, write it down. And then take an hour at the end of the week, go through with a red pencil, mark off stuff that doesn't need done at all,
Mm-hmm.
and put names of other people that could do it next to some of those things.
Yeah.
And the other part of the homework is, I tell them take an hour, 15 minutes is that. The rest is for them, because we do not, and I think you said that somewhere in there, we do not as women think it's okay to rest,
Right.
to do
Right.
something we love, to take a walk, to take a nap.
Yeah.
We may not sleep at night, but we can nap.
Yeah.
It's okay to take care of yourself.
Yeah. We're very hard on ourselves. And again, I think it starts from a very young age. Like, that's the thing. And, when I'm working with clients, is it's it starts with us understanding why we're driven by certain things. And again, this isn't about judgment. It's not about I'm doing something right or wrong. It's none of that. It's just creating that awareness. Like you said, I love that. I actually use that exercise with my clients a lot too, is because until you actually know what you're doing, you can't begin to shift or change anything. And exactly right. Like, what is really important? What do you need to do? What can somebody else do? And you know what? What are those things that you can just say, not that important. I'm just going to take them off my plate. Like, right? Because again, we have to create that awareness. Everything starts with that self-awareness. And when you understand that and you see that, and it is, sometimes that's a very enlightening exercise, and almost like I've had some clients who are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was happening. Or sometimes, like you said, you look at it and say, oh my gosh, like how have I been doing this? Because that's the other thing too, is sometimes I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for what we are doing in a day, what we are doing in a week. And then when you actually see it, you're like, I am doing a lot. And now you understand, like you said, now you understand why you're tired, you're exhausted, you understand why you can't go to sleep because your mind is racing. You understand all of these things where you're like, now I understand why before I even get out of bed, I'm in my phone and I'm looking at my email messages. And the last thing I do is check my email messages from bed as well. And this is the part where I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know what? I was that person. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to live that way. And it doesn't mean, you have to quit your job, change jobs. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means is you taking back your power and control and putting in those parameters and deciding what's truly important for you so that you can also have, time for yourself as well. And the thing is like you said, they don't want to rest. You don't want to take, you feel guilty for taking time for yourself. And it's like, you know what? That 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to get that back in hours of productivity and efficiency, all of that. And that's that piece where, again, we have to switch those patterns, those internal patterns and those drivers to be able to shift and change that. Because, yeah, it's the mode of, go, 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 hustle, 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 do. I'm like, it works until it doesn't work. And then you know what? It's going to throw everything into a heyday, and you're going to be like, okay, now what do I do? And what I want to do is I want to help people not to get to that, complete burnout mode, that complete mode of, everything comes crashing down, and because, like I said, small little incremental shifts create such big changes.
Yes. And some of the people that have been on here, I mean, it can really affect us physically too,
Yeah.
health wise.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's the thing is like everything, it's going to affect you physically, mentally, emotionally. It's going to impact your relationships. I mean, my life imploded. Everything. I lost my job. I lost my relationship, my health, everything. And the thing is, and that's where, like, now that's an extreme case. Like, and here, I'm not going to pretend like, were there signs? Sure. Were there things where I sat there and I mean, I was the classic, oh, I'll do that later. Oh, once I finish this big project, then I'll take that time for me. Oh, wait, I don't have time to go on that vacation. Oh, wait, so no, trust me, there were signs and there were like, and again, the body, you will, like, life has a way of working itself out, right? And so the thing is I chose not to hear these messages, right? And so the messages would get a little bit louder and louder, and I'd be like, not now, not now, not now. And then finally it's like, okay, now we're just going to throw it all up in the air. Now what are you going to do? And that was the thing, right? At that point, I could have chose not to evaluate that, reevaluate it, or I had to say, okay, this isn't working anymore. And it was very, like I think about that process, because like I said, I still resisted it initially and still felt, because again, as a high achiever, somebody who's like, I set goals, I achieve them, I just make do. I always make it happen, like, right? Because that's the thing, especially as women too, we just make it happen. We're like, we'll make it happen. And so that was my thing, is I'm like, I can barrel through this. I'm okay. And finally I had to get still, and I had to just kind of say, I had to get real with myself and go, wait, what is really happening here? And that's the part where it can be a little bit scary sometimes, because we have to get vulnerable and we have to admit to ourselves that, hey, that's not working and it's okay. And it doesn't mean anything about me, because initially I felt that that was a failure for me. Like, how did I, how, like this, I'm failing myself. And that's the thing is, we have to pull all that away. We have to pull that away and just come back to like what's really happening here, and be gentle with ourselves too. To be able to say, it's not, I didn't do anything wrong. The deal was, I didn't know any different. And that's what I always say is, once you know something, you can't you can't unknow it, right? And so once you have that awareness, that gives you the opportunity to shift and change with that. And that only happens when you take that pause and that step back. But if you're trying to shift and change in the middle of the day, in the middle of the routines that you're just constantly moving from one thing to the next, it's not going to happen. That's why, like, sometimes, if somebody's like, oh, like, I have all this stress going on in my life, I have all these demands, and I'm going to start to meditate, or I'm going to, do my workout. And then they do it a little bit and they're like, well, I'm not getting any results. Well, again, it's there's a whole, everything's interconnected there. And we can't sit there, if we're in go mode, 12 hours a day, and we think, oh, okay, I'm going to do 15 minutes of meditation. Meditation's great. I love it. It's very powerful. It's wonderful. But the thing is we can't keep living and doing the same thing, because the meditation's going to help you, but you're never going to move forward. And that's the thing, is you have to be able to, that's what I do, is like, you create that awareness, you start to understand what's working, what's not working, and then you sit there and say, okay, now how do I create the habits, the lifestyle that supports that? Because again, we can't keep doing the same exact thing and expect a different result.
Yeah, that's called insanity, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna play a little devil advocate here for a second. And I don't usually do this, but what do you have to say to the mom that's out there that has probably small children, teenagers? They're alone, they're divorced, they're trying to hold the whole world together and do everything. And they're saying, well, I don't even have time for meditation or anything. How do you have any advice for that person? Because there's so many women out there trying to be mom, dad, everybody, and still keep that breadwinner and keeping it all going. And they're saying, well, I don't have time for this.
Yeah. And first of all, like, kudos to you, because it's hard, right? It's hard when we have, we're trying to do it all, and we're the one we're carrying all these different roles, and I totally hear that. And I'm also going to say that the best thing that you can do in that situation, that will support you in that situation, is really getting clear on where you're at and again, it's like, what is important, and finding those moments. Because as soon as you take control of that, because I hear you, like, right, I don't have time for that. But I'm here to tell you that if you take this time and you really get clear, and this is where we really dive in deeper and find out, like, what is happening. Because, like, right, your attention is in so many different directions, but there's always time and there's always ways to be able to tighten that up, improve that. But when you take control of yourself and you start to really understand what's driving you, and you start coming from that place of, that internal driver, all these other things, like, here's the deal, time, you will get so much time back. Like, I think about my life now, like, I have so much time to get things done, And people are like, how do you get all this done? And I do it in a very, like, I guess if you want to call it flow state. Like I do it in that. And so as a single mom, as a single parent, as somebody who's doing all the things, the most important thing you can do that will create the biggest shift for you is to make yourself a priority. And again, I'm not talking like you don't have to take hours out of your day. You don't have to take out, like, this is not something that's going to take you months to figure out. You can, we can have a conversation and I can guarantee you, I can give you 1 to 3 things that are going to create a big shift for you right away. And when you start to do that, that's the other power of this, is when we start to make those small little shifts. Because I'm such a believer in those micro shifts. Because oftentimes, like, right, in scenarios like that, we feel like we have to, throw our entire life up into a, and be like, okay, now I got to upheaval everything to be able to create this change. And I'm like, no, you don't. Just these small little micro shifts create such big change. And here's the deal, is when you start to do that, you start to create this momentum, right? And then all of a sudden, everything starts to, work off of it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, how do I have this much time? Why doesn't this take as much time for me? And then all of a sudden you're like, I do have time to take care of myself. So that stuff, because a lot of times it's like, where is our attention going? And when we can draw our focus back to those things, all of a sudden so much time, our energy improves. We're able to get so much more done. And again, the other piece too is, like you were talking about the body earlier, is what's really happening inside our mind and our body. Because that is also, that's either going to drain us, drag us down, or it's going to energize us and help us, be more effective, more efficient. And that's that piece of it, is I'm like, my piece of advice is the number one thing you can do is start to reflect and start to look at yourself and say, okay, what are some areas and ways I can create a change? Because once you start to do that, you build that momentum and then it just starts to happen. So it's not, because I think that's probably the hardest step too, whether you're a single parent or you're sitting here going, I don't have time to create this change in my life. And I don't want anyone to think that it's like some big thing or like it's some big task and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to find time so I can create this change. No, it's just these small little things that you can do. And when you start to bring your focus on those things, everything's, because again, we can create and we can do this. And we are supported too. But we have to get ourselves in that place and in that spot of saying, I'm choosing. And I always say the first thing you have to do is you have to make that decision. Once you decide, it's almost like drawing that line in the sand, saying, I am deciding I want something new. And as soon as you do that, that starts to set things into motion. But it all starts and stops with you.
I love that. And just to add to that, I feel that it's not selfish to do this because particularly if you have daughters or nieces or other young women in your life, you're giving them a gift by
Yeah.
showing them how to take care of yourself as a woman.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, right? Because, as I mentioned, I'm all about empowering women. And the thing is we have to if there's one piece of advice, we have to take care of ourselves first. And I was that same person. I neglected myself. I was on the bottom of my list, all of that. And again, that doesn't mean, because oftentimes people will hear that and they're like, well, I don't have time to go get massages and go vacation and do this and do that. And I'm like, that is a piece of taking care of yourself. Yes. And though there are other ways to take care of yourself. I'm like, here's one thing. How many times, like I always say too, this is one thing is to add to your homework that you shared earlier is I want you to do one thing for you a day that brings you joy.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be 30 seconds. That could be a minute. That could be like people who drink coffee, right? I said, how often do you actually just sit there and enjoy your coffee? Like actually mindfully, intentionally enjoy your coffee. And I'm like, you start doing that in itself is going to start to create a shift and a change in how you're going to show up the rest of your day. And that's why I'm always like, do one thing that brings you joy. It could be anything. And do one thing that's for you, No distractions, no outside, no nothing. It could be as simple as sitting outside in the sunshine. One thing for you. That shift. So again, that's another illustration of these little micro shifts that create such a big change in how you show up, how you feel, how you respond, all of that. And just think, if you start to compound those and you start to add more and more of those in, and that's why I think also sometimes people get challenged with wanting to change this stuff because they're like, I don't have the time to do this. But yet I'm like, you start really small. It's the small little steps. And once you take that first step, like, right, it's even like if you think about like, right, we're coming up into the new year and, everyone's going to start saying, oh, okay, I'm going to start going to the gym. Well, oftentimes you have somebody who hasn't been working out, hasn't been going to the gym, and they're like, I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. Well, how long does that work? They might get there 3 days and then they're done. And that's why I'm like, it's about the small little micro shifts. Start making those small little shifts that start to show you, because when you create that joy and you start showing yourself that you matter, other things are going to naturally start to shift and change. And so as advice, I would say, don't feel like, number one, too, don't feel like you have to figure it out. You have it all figured out. Like, you don't have to know how this is all going to work out, but you do have to decide. And you have to decide and say, I'm choosing me, and I'm choosing to change this. And then as you do that, you take those small little steps. And like I said, that self-awareness. What are you really doing? Because they do show, even too, like, I don't have time for this. They show on average, people spend 4 to 6 hours on social media in a day. Well, if you weren't in social media for 4 to 6 hours a day, imagine what you could do. So again, it goes back to that awareness of what is really important. Because we can always, and there's always time and space for what's important for us.
Yeah. You can't say it better than that. Everybody's going, well, yeah, I guess I could not scroll this much and watch those baby videos.
Right. Well, and
maybe
I'm not
I can do
saying,
something for me.
right. Well, and that's the thing is
Because
sometimes
we think, oh, well, this is my me time, but it's not really, because there's so many reasons that would take a whole podcast.
right.
But that coffee thing, I love that. It's kind of like
Yeah, it's just enjoying, like, do you even notice how your coffee or
love that.
tea or whatever, like, I'm just like, just notice that. Because so often, I mean, like, right, again, look around. Most people are drinking their coffee as they're going off doing something else. And you're like, just take a moment, just breathe. Like, I'm like, sometimes people are like, I don't even have a moment to breathe. And I'm like, and that's what's wrong. Like, right? Because again, I always sit there and I'm like, I was this same person. Like, right? We put so much pressure on ourselves. We feel like we have to do it all. We feel like and we feel like if we're not doing it, we're letting ourselves down and somebody else down. And I'm like, it's okay to pause. It's okay to breathe. It's okay. And when you do that, you're going to come back. Take that nap. Take that 10-minute nap. When you come back, you're going to be so much more refreshed. You're going to be more focused, and you're going to get more done. And instead of pushing, because that's always the thing I always say is like, right? Also to acknowledge, like, throughout the day, how much are you pushing, trying to make things happen? And then we get frustrated because it's like, it's not happening or it's taking too long. It's all those things. And I'm like, that's where we have to be able to step back and be like, okay, how can I do this in a way that is, instead of pushing, it's more with that ease. It's more with that process of, because and that's why, like, all these little things we've just talked about are little ways to kind of break that up, take that pause, set that, refocus yourself. And then you come back with such different energy. And then you're able to do this, and you're able to be present for your kids. You're able to be present at work. But if we never take that moment to pause, and yes, I'm with you, scrolling is not a pause. That's just basically numbing us, and we're not pausing. It's not a true intentional pause. And trust me, I do it too. I'm not saying I do it as well. And the other thing too is I always say too, do it. And then check in with yourself. and see how your energy is. See how you're feeling afterwards. Because most often you're going to be very low compared to even if you're like, hey, I'm just going to go and check one thing. I notice it all the time if I end up staying in there too long. My energy dips, all of that, and all of a sudden then I feel like it's almost more exhausting than doing something sometimes. So like again, it all comes back to that awareness. Starting to really understand where are you putting your time, your energy, your focus, and how are you going to choose? Because that's the other thing is, yes, we have things, we have demands that are, part of our work, our life, our all of that. But you also have a choice on how you're going to navigate that and show up and how you're going to, there's no rule that this is the way it has to be done. But you have to create that awareness and you have to understand that I want something different.
Yeah. Okay, tell them about your program.
So yes, so as you can see, I'm super passionate about this because I just see the difference. I know the difference it's made for me. I see the difference it makes for others. And really what we do is, we've barely touched the surface of what we do with what I do one-on-one. It's a very bespoke, highly personalized. I do one-on-one coaching along with also then we incorporate and we integrate everything into an incredible, retreat experience. So I always look at it and say, you will have the opportunity to really understand like what is driving you, what is important to you. And then also really understanding like, again, it's looking at it and saying, what do I truly want? Because you are the creator of your life. And then we really dive in and we look at like, what's working, what's not working, what's blocking, what are those stories, what are those beliefs, what's happening there? Because so often, like we think it's the stuff, we're like, oh, just if work would do X, Y, Z, then everything would be great. Well, I'm here to tell you that's probably not what the problem is, like, right? Or what the challenge is, right? So then we really get clear on that. And then the next step is we really look at and say, okay, how do we build those habits, that sustainable lifestyle? How do we create that so that you can navigate? And we look and say, like, right, is it a boundaries thing? Do we have to pivot? Do we, how do we have those relationships, those conversations? So it's really building that emotional, that mental, that physical aspect of, and spiritual aspect of who you are, so that you are so clear on who you are, so that you can show up in control, in power. And we do that through, just a number of different, different modalities and different practices, meeting you where you're at. Because that's the thing, is like, this is not a one-size-fits-all practice. This is an opportunity for really understanding where you're at. We're going to meet you where you're at. We're going to focus on the things that matter. And like I said, my thing too is we're going to get you some really quick wins fast. Because again, that's what builds that momentum. And from that, then we start to build. So everyone is a little bit different on where we start and where we focus. And then we bring it all together where you have that time. Oftentimes, like we've talked this whole time about, I don't have time for this. Imagine being able to have an experience where it's you yourself and you're able to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to take care of me and I'm going to put myself in this position and I'm going to be so clear on what it is, what I want, what drives me, and being able to choose how I'm moving forward. And so everything I do is highly personalized, customized, and it's really being able to understand. It's getting deeper. Like that's the thing, is like anyone who works with me is they're like, okay, I've heard some of these things. Maybe I've read the books or I've listened to the podcast, done all that, but we go deep. We go so deep where you really understand. And the thing is you will create these lasting changes. And again, yes, I always say it's not like, you do the work and then, poof, you just, you will shift and you will change how you live your life. And that's the thing that is I get so excited about, is because then you sit there and you see that it doesn't have to be that struggle. You see that you can be in control of that. And you know what? You can get to that next level. You can combine your work and your personal, and you can have that personal fulfillment with that, professional success. And it's just an opportunity for you to, I don't know, and I just really combine a lot of like that energetic psychology mindset, all of that, and pulling that together. I don't know anyone who does, There's similar work out there, yes, but not in the way that I do it. And that's why this work is so powerful, is because it works. This methodology works, and it creates long-term lasting change.
I love it. Wow, thank you so much for showing up. What a great conversation. And I know it's needed so much out there by so many women. And of course, she will be sharing all those links with me so I can have them in the call notes. So if something she said resounded with you and you just want to have a talk with
Yeah,
her, and obviously she gives you information for free here. So yeah, so don't hesitate to sign up and talk to her because you never know where that can go and what can
exactly.
change in your life.
Yeah.
It's time as women we took care of ourselves. And
Hmm.
also remember, get that cup of coffee and tell everybody just stay away for about 5 minutes.
Yes.
That's part of what I got.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that
It's
is so, so powerful. So this is She Wears Boldly and Dr. Deborah with Mel. And Mel, right at the end, I always ask somebody to say what She Wears Boldly means to them. So what does She Wears Boldly mean to you?
it is to me, it is taking back your personal power. It's
I
really taking back your personal power and just fully embodying it, and trusting that, number one, you deserve it because you do, and number two, that when you do that, you create a difference for you, and you create such a powerful difference for those around you.
I love that. So, and it's so true. That's how we get our roar. We can't
Hmm.
roar if we're depleted,
Exactly.
right? So, thank you again for showing up. And thank you, Mel, for being here today and sharing all those wonderful tips and advice. And may have to watch this a couple times to get all those, do it with a pen and paper because I know she wants your life to change.
Yeah. Thank
She
you. It was such a
does.
pleasure.
Yeah. All right. This is She Wears Boldly, Dr. Deborah, and have a beautiful and incredible week.